there must have been discussions there in Pendle Hill about individual beliefs, little discussion sessions, and I must have, I don't remember the details, but I must have told them exactly how I felt. And in those days, I suppose I know that there are still people who feel the same way, that all wars are wrong, and especially now, because now they're getting so big and where you can't control them anymore. We're just lucky we haven't blown up the world yet.
So when did you hear that you'd been reclassified, and what was your reaction to that?
Well, I was happy because I did contemplate going to jail. I figured I had to. If they said I'd be 1A, I figured I had no other alternative because I didn't want to go to war. So I was happy, and must have been in '43 when I did go to a conscientious objectors camp in Powellsville, Maryland. And I liked it, with a bunch of similar guys with the same ideas. And then from there I went to work in the state mental hospital in Middletown, Connecticut. And that was also, I liked that especially was obviously useful work. And so I was glad to do it. And in Powellsville, it was very questionable about whether we were really doing anything worthwhile.
What were you doing?
We were digging a ditch. We were cutting down the trees, and then big drag lines came in, and I guess it was some kind of canal or something. I don't know if they ever got finished. So that was kind of a wasteful thing. While I was there, I was hoping to get into. There was one government camp. Most of these camps were run by religious groups, like the Powellsville was a Quaker camp. I don't know that I had any. I don't think you had any choice as to where they first put you. Well, I just happened to end up in this Quaker camp, and of course they were real nice people, and so I was happy to be there. But I did apply, I think, and I wanted to go to a government camp, which was in California, because I really felt that that's where I belonged. I didn't, because I certainly wasn't religious in the strict sense of the word, but I couldn't get into that.
What was the government camp's purpose?
They were working on Mount Shasta in California, which sounded like quite a thrilling business. So and I don't know exactly what they were doing, but it was. I wonder why they did have a government camp separate from the religious camps, religious controlled camps. There must have been a lot of other people, at least, who felt they didn't belong in the religious camp. And I think that the people who sponsored these religious work camps later said that they felt that they were wrong in doing so because they were doing the government's work there. They shouldn't, which was keeping people, in a sense, locked up because of their beliefs. And they thought, so they thought that was wrong. They wouldn't want to do it again.
Did you ever feel at this time like doing work in camps or in the hospital or what have you was doing government work, was doing war work?
Well, we talked a lot about what we were doing, whether it was right or wrong, and so on. Like in the mental hospital, for example, we realized that because we were there were people released from jobs in the mental hospital, and a lot of those people went to war. I guess that's one of the reasons why we were there, is because they were short-handed, because a lot of those guys did either go into war work or into the war. So in a way, we were freeing people to do that sort of thing. And there were conscientious objectors, absolute objectors who didn't believe in doing anything. And even when they were put in prison, they didn't believe in doing any work there. Well, yeah, I didn't feel that way. Well, I think I understood and maybe even felt that they were right, but I didn't go that far.
Mm-hmm. Did you know people, or did you ever even consider sort of a policy of non-compliance?
No, not. I don't think I did. Even though, I mean, I didn't think I could do it. Even though I felt that was probably the right thing. I suppose in a way I did that. I stopped working for Western Electric in a sense that's non-compliance, I suppose, not working for the war effort. But I didn't feel that I could go to jail and then not do anything there. I was satisfied with doing what I thought was some useful work. And though the work camp was questionable, I think the mental hospital at least was.
Tell me first about the work camp. What were the conditions there like? What did you sleep in? What did you eat?
Yeah, we slept in barracks, and it was kind of like I suppose an army camp. And we went to work every day. We in trucks out to the forest where we chopped down the trees and then came back. The conditions weren't real bad. We had a library, for example. We did KP work and that kind of stuff around there. But and we had a furlough. I don't remember what, once a year or something like that, to go back home. So I didn't mind it. It was quite different from being brought up in Chicago, and so it was an interesting experience to me. And all kinds of discussions. We even had some communists who were calling for a second front in that war camp. In that war camp.
Why were they in a camp as opposed to fighting?
Good question. A lot of people felt that there were people, as you might imagine, who felt that the war was right, but they didn't want to go and risk their lives. So that's what happened to a lot of people. Well, I don't know about a lot, but there were certainly some people that way. There were people who felt it was right, and so it was their duty to go in and participate. I felt that it was wrong. And even though I know Hitler was certainly wrong, and what he was doing to the Jews was wrong, still I didn't really think that people were all that different all over the world. I didn't think it was justified thing to do to be killing people en masse like that. Though I'm not completely opposed to killing. I mean, I think police. I can understand why police might be called in to kill a person who's got a gun who's shooting people, something like that. I think that's different from war, mass killing.
How would you have proposed the government of the United States or governments of Europe could have been able to conspire to stop Hitler without?
I don't know. Somebody's answered that by saying that they shouldn't have gotten into the First World War, or at least certainly should not have treated Germany the way they did after the First World War, when they were starving. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I am a strong believer in the United Nations. I think that and the World Federalists, which believe in a world government. I think we have to have that, and we have to have, and I believe that if they felt they had to use force, the United Nations say, then I think that might be okay. But I don't believe in patriotism in individual country. Nationalism, I don't believe in that. I believe in international. Oh.
How about the other people who were in the camp with you? What were they like?
Well, there were all kinds of beliefs, but they were mostly religious objectors. But religious objector is kind of a loose term, because most of those people belong, maybe most of them belonged to churches who sent people off to war. They allowed for pacifists in the church or conscientious objectors, but they didn't. Didn't really believe that was the right thing to do. So they were. It was complex. What you could say. It still had to be an individual belief and act. I think. A decision to do that.
Yeah, Francis Hall was saying that even as a Quaker from Richmond, Indiana, which is basically a Quaker town, he was one of very few people who decided to be a conscientious objector, and he faced a lot of opposition from the Quaker elders within his town.
I don't know if I heard him say that.
Yeah. I thought that was somewhat remarkable.
Yeah.
Another thing he had mentioned, which I wanted to ask you about, was he had said that he thought, as a general rule, the people that he met in conscientious objector camps were some of the finest people that he'd met in his life, most interesting, most thought provoking. What did you find about the people who you were in camps with?
Well, I liked them all, or at least most of them were the ones I hanged around with. I liked them, and they certainly were good people. I feel that way about Quakers. From my experience with Quakers, I didn't have any experience with them until I went to the work camp and to civilian public service. I felt that they really believed and acted according to their beliefs. Yeah. Even though I don't think I believe in the inner light, for example. Still, I think that they did believe it and they acted accordingly, and so I really respect them. So but I also realized that there were other people who were just as honest and conscientious, no matter what they happened to. I mean, they could have been Catholics or Jews or Methodists or whatever, Protestants.
Were there any other Jews in camp with you?
There was one guy who was a communist, at least Jewish background, and he happened to come to Madison. And later, he died a couple of years ago. Maybe Francis Hall mentioned him. But I kind of respected guys like that too, who really believed in who really had a faith in their ideas, communism in that case. Although it was certainly inconsistent to be in a peace camp, a pacifist work camp, and hope and be working for a second front.
How long were you then in Maryland?
That was, I think, about maybe it was a half year or a year, I'm not sure. And then I went to the mental hospital, Middletown, Connecticut.
So this would be then probably roughly the beginning of 1944?
43 is, I think, 44, I suppose that's right. And then I was there until, I think 46. I think it may have been like about 3 years altogether.
So you spent 2 full years in Connecticut?
Yeah, I think I did. I think that's probably the way it was.
What were your responsibilities there?
Just a ward attendant. with just taking care of the patients, breaking up fights, and just talking with them and helping them. I worked. I also worked. Well, there was a criminally insane ward where the patients were in jails essentially. And a lot of them walked around in camisole straitjackets. Mm-hmm. And I also helped some with shock treatments, which is quite an experience. What we had to do, the attendants had to hold the guy down, because when they gave him a shock, and all their muscles were violently being agitated by the shock, and you had to hold them down, otherwise they might break bones. Did that. It was quite an experience for a young guy. So there was a lot of new experience for me. We also did some protesting about conditions in the mental hospitals. We worked in a pretty good mental hospital actually in Connecticut, but we did go down to I remember a couple times going down to the state legislature and complaining about conditions there. People weren't being fed very good food, we felt, and conditions were not really good. We thought they could have been improved. Wasn't as bad as some of the really terrible hellholes in Philadelphia. There was one, Byberry, I think it was called, and there's some others.
How many of the people working at the hospital were COs?
On the wards, almost all of them. They did have, they had a regular attendant or two in charge of us on the ward. But almost all of us, I think, were COs. I think so, unless they just put us in a special section. So that's who we saw mostly.
Who ran the hospital? Who ran this part of the civilian public service program?
I think that there was a Quaker director, and but of course the hospital had administrators too. It was run jointly probably. Oh.
When you were working at the hospital, did you see a lot of people who had come back from the war at that point? Were a lot of the people who were checked in people who had been in the war?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. These were people who had been there for a long time. I think that happened after. Even though we did stay for a while after the war ended, but still, I don't think we saw any of that.
What were the living conditions like in Connecticut? Did you live on the hospital grounds? Or?
Yeah, we lived on the hospital grounds, and we had I don't know that they were individual rooms. Maybe there were a couple of guys in a room, and they were nice rooms where we stayed. And we ate at the hospital cafeteria. And we had some free time. They had beautiful grounds that we could hike around in. I was also in a jaundice experiment while I was there. People from Yale came, New Haven, came and asked for volunteers for this jaundice experiment, hepatitis. So I was a volunteer, a guinea pig. I didn't get it. I don't know if I was, if they did. I don't know what they gave me. They may have given me a placebo, just as a control group or something like that. But some people did get sick and were in the hospital for weeks, I guess. But that was just one of the things I did while I was there.
Why did you decide to volunteer for that, considering the danger of contracting jaundice?
I think most of us felt that there were people who were sacrificing for the war, even though we didn't believe in it. And we felt that we should do our. That's why I guess I went to the mental hospital in the first place. That we felt that we should be doing something very useful. Also, we should just be completely free just because we don't believe in the war. So we felt it was our obligation.
Do you think that, in retrospect or what have you, do you think that's that was sort of part that contributed to like an attitude of compliance at all? You mentioned you felt like that was doing your part, which is the same sort of phrase that people who went to war used, or people who supported the war.
Yeah. I think that's why we did those things. Although I think a real pacifist believes that you have to do things to prevent war and to avoid war, and to make. In other words, you have to correct conditions that are bad before it comes to a war. But most people, even though they're pacifists, kind of let those things slide, not do very much. But once we're in war, we felt that and other people were sacrificing. We felt, I'm sure a lot of us did feel that we had to do more too.
Were the people who worked with you at the hospital pretty much the same as the people who had worked in Maryland? Could you request a transfer to this sort of work as opposed to outdoor work?
Yeah, you requested it. So I think that maybe there were people who were more interested in doing. It was called nationally important work, I think. Whether it was quite that, but it was useful work anyway. And I think that there were at least some goof-offs in the work camp who just really wanted to sit out the war and didn't. We're happy to do the least amount possible.
Did you know any people who started out in these work camps and then decided upon a policy of non-compliance?
There were some. I don't know if I remember or know of any ones in particular, but there certainly were some. We certainly heard about them. I don't know about that particular camp.
What would generally happen with these people?
Well, I think
how long was it that they would be sort of non-compliant in a camp before they would be taken to prison?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't think I know any particulars about that. I didn't. So I can't answer that exactly.
What was the reaction to your decision of people in your life, your family, your friends?
I think generally they didn't. My family didn't really think that was right. They were happy that I wasn't going to war. They didn't want their kid to go off somewhere and get killed. But they didn't really think that was the way to do it. But they were sympathetic anyway. I remember my brother-in-law once spent a long time trying to talk me out of it, but didn't do it. I probably could have done otherwise. See, I was an engineering student. I had already gone 3 years to night school engineering, and electrical engineering at Illinois Tech in Chicago, and I probably could have. I think that they had special deferments for engineering students, for example, or even if I went into the war, I probably could have gotten some radio job or something like that. But I really didn't believe that was right.
So there was no hostility from anyone in terms of your decision. Just that you were wrong.
Yeah, I wasn't. I really wasn't one who went around and broadcast my feelings, my ideas. So I suppose even the neighbors where we lived, I don't think that if they did, they didn't say much about it. So I don't really know how they felt about that. I can only speak for my family. I guess. I had a twin brother, and he didn't go along with that, even though he was in the same group of guys as I was, pretty much. It turned out he got a 4F. He was deferred. His blood pressure went up real high when he was being tested, examined. So he didn't actually go. I had another brother who was in the Army,
Mm-hmm.
an older brother.
Was there any reactions you remember from people in general when you were, say, traveling from place to place, or when people would see you on the street and say, you know, why aren't you off fighting for your country?
There wasn't anything direct that I recall anyway. I know that at least you heard that people never thought much of conscientious objectors during the war, that kind of stuff. But it was indirect, and so we didn't, like when I went home on the train. I didn't talk with the guy next to me and tell him what I was doing or anything like that. If he asked me, I would. But because I knew that it would be, or I figured it would be unpleasant, and at that time I didn't do things like that. Now I'm older and I find out that I can get into some interesting conversations if I tell somebody I was a CO. But before I wasn't that way.
Did you feel that part of your conviction, part of being a conscientious objector, was in sort of spreading your views, or did you think it was a very individual decision?
Well, it was an individual decision. I did also feel that you had to spread your views, but I didn't do it personally. I supported. I contributed some too, and I did do some protest work when they had a group of people at the stadium or something passing out leaflets. Well, I did do some of that as a group. I didn't do it individually.
After the war was over, how do you think that your work, the school that you went back to, or what have you, changed because of your status as a CO? Was there a post-war ramifications of your having been a conscientious objector?
I may have had trouble getting work, but I did. I got a scholarship to Illinois Tech after the war, and I think that they were sympathetic. They must have been sympathetic. I mean, I told them what I did,